So again, my name is Alex Nicholas Kuhn. I'm the executive director of the Massillon Museum, and joining me from the museum staff this evening too, behind the scenes, is Anna Young, our administrative assistant, and she'll also be running our technology. So again, if you have questions for us or the panelists, you can pose them in the chat and we'll monitor them as best we can throughout the presentation portion. We are here tonight because we at the Massillon Museum have the honor of hosting the Women of Resilience exhibition. It is being featured in a different iteration than it previously was at Ashland University. It was a beautiful exhibition I had the opportunity to see and hope many of you did also. And it opened on March 27th. It runs through May 23rd. And it's provided a wonderful opportunity to connect with other themes the Massillon Museum is exploring through its NEA Big Read program. And several of you may be aware of that program, but for those of you who are not, it is a National Endowment for the Arts funded literacy program that allows us to present a variety of programming focused on a selected book each year. This book is Circe by Madeline Miller. And the themes in the book relate to a lot of what the exhibition also addresses through the creativity of the 25 artists featured. But there are lots of other programs related to the Big Read where you can learn more about the book. We want to focus tonight on the women we have with us this evening. As always, I'd like to acknowledge the Ohio Arts Council and Arts and Stark for their incredible support in the form of operating grants to the Massillon Museum. And I did want to mention too that on May 1st, we have a socially distanced reception where you can meet many of the artists featured in Women of Resilience. There are timed tickets. You can go to massmu.org/tickets, the same way that you did to register for tonight. And you can select a time that you'd like to attend. That's to help us keep everyone safe, maintain social distancing. I'm sure you can appreciate by now those mandates and other rules that are in effect related to COVID. But we're really excited to gather people in a safe manner to celebrate the women and the themes and the exhibition as a whole. Virtual tours can be scheduled through the museum's education department as well, if you're not able to come in person or you'd like to arrange a larger group like tonight. And you can contact Stephanie Toole or email education@massillonmuseum.org. And text in the exhibition is also available in Braille. So if any of you know individuals who are have blindness or low vision and want to accompany you or others to the exhibition, all text is available as well in Braille as part of our accessibility initiatives. Without further ado, I would like to introduce the three co-curators with us tonight, and then they will subsequently introduce the additional artists who are with us as well. Priscilla Roggenkamp, Patricia O'Neill Sacha, and Judith Sterling are the exhibition's co-curators, and we're so thrilled to have them with us tonight. Priscilla is an associate professor of art at Ashland University who works in a variety of media, but perhaps most notably textile-based sculpture. We're proud to claim her among our Stark County artists with us tonight, and also the co-curators are all Stark Countians, with whom we have many occasions to collaborate in both the artistic and the musical realms. Both Priscilla and Sarah joining us tonight were awarded the Individual Excellence Award from the Ohio Arts Council for 2021. And I believe Priscilla is among the only Stark County artists to have received that prestigious recognition. So congratulations, Priscilla. We're so proud of you and pleased to have you with us tonight.
Thank you. I am so pleased to be here, and this is such a pleasure. Zoom is starting to become so familiar and comfortable, so I'm just awfully glad to be here. The first thing I want to do is, on behalf of all the curators, is just to thank the Massillon Museum. You, Alex, and Anna, and Michelle, and Emily, everyone has been so easy to work with, and just to welcome us in, we could not be happier, so thank you so much for that.
Oh, you're so very welcome, and I'm really looking forward to learning more about your work and your process and those of your co-curators, all the artists in the show. And another of your fellow curators is Patricia O'Neill Sacha. And Patricia resides in Alliance. She considers herself a ceramics artist, but as we learned this evening, she utilizes other media to create what she describes as funky manifestations of her creative mind. She has been a member of the Canton Pottery Guild for 20 years and is a fine arts degree from Ohio University focused on oil painting. It's really the ceramic arts that she returns to. And after a long career as a therapist, she returned to her artistic roots. And we're so glad she did. And thank you for joining us tonight, Patricia. And the third curator is Judith Sterling, again, a Stark County, Ohio artist residing in Massillon. She sculpts in a variety of media, be they metals, marble, clay, or as you'll see in this exhibition, glass as well. She has a BFA from Kent State University, but has studied in Italy and North Carolina, teaches jewelry classes at the Canton Museum of Art, and works in, it seems like any media that inspires her to create. So we're very excited again to welcome you, Judith, among the three co-curators here with us tonight. So with that, I'd like for Patricia and Judith, if there are any other biographical tidbits you would like to share before we delve into the first question. We'd love to, Patricia, hear from you first.
I guess I'm
I didn't mention, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm so pleased to be part of this. It's a phenomenal learning experience, and it reflects my passion for art, but also reflects the interest I also have in helping people. And that's what this show is about, how women work really hard to get the equality that they have always wanted and needed and deserved.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Judith, would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself before we delve into the questions?
It's been wonderful to be able to work on this show together. I've learned so much, but it also was a chance to, I've always been very passionate about women's issues, and this was a very wonderful way to portray that.
Great, thank you so much. Patricia, I wanted to throw the first question to you. Tell us a little bit about the origin of this exhibition. It was linked to the centennial of the women's suffrage movement that officially was taking place throughout 2019 and part of 2020. But I'd love to hear more about the way you came to facilitate, the idea for this exhibition. How it came to you?
The idea basically came out of the women's suffrage movement that's started in Stark County in the summer of 2019. Groups of women became affiliated from Alliance, Massillon, and Canton, joined together informally, led by Connie Rubens, to discuss ways that we as women could help celebrate and educate people about what has happened in our history of trying to get the right to vote. And Judith Sterling and I started, I think, in January and February of 2019, I'm sorry. And we went to a meeting in Canton, and we went to a meeting in Alliance. At the second meeting, Judy wasn't able to attend, but Connie asked the group that how could we use the people within our group to create ideas and things to promote our movement that was nationally affiliated. Connie looked at me because I had mentioned I was an artist, and she said, how about starting an art show, looking into starting an art show? And I couldn't imagine doing something like that. I've been in lots of shows as part of groups, individually. I've had shows at my house, but this seemed out of my range. But I turned to Judy, who was familiar with the concept, and she got real excited about exploring the idea. And then I called Priscilla, my friend and artist, and asked her opinion, and she also got excited. So we started meeting together. We started meeting together, and um, we looked into how this was going to come about, who, if we would do it, how would we do it? You know, who would we invite? Where would it be held? And we spent close to a year getting things ready. And the first show was supposed to open in Canton and in Massillon in June of 2020. And pandemic hit and it was canceled, of course. So is that enough information to start with?
No, absolutely. I think that's great. You know, it's always helpful to hear about the inspiration for how an exhibition, especially a group exhibition, comes to be. And I think the themes in this exhibition, they resonate, you know, obviously maybe with me personally as a woman, but I really have appreciated the universal themes that are present, that extend beyond the reach of the suffrage movement. So while that was definitely the impetus for developing and bringing all of these women together, again, the resonance of the individual artworks and their voice together speaks, you know, beyond, I believe, the anniversary. But it being the impetus is just a wonderful way that it could help celebrate that important facet of our history and of helping most women at that time gain their voice and get on the right track toward equality. So I'd like to ask Judy a question.
Okay.
Those themes. So Judy Sterling, and you're welcome to turn your video on if you would like. Something more about the theme, if you could take us a little deeper into those themes and how they were selected. The goals were the idea of resilience, personal empowerment, overcoming barriers, the capacity to recover, acts of strength and resistance, and healing the world and ourselves, which perhaps last year felt more important than anything else in many ways. So I wondered if you could please, Judith, speak a bit to how those themes came to be and why it's important that those themes be focused on in the context of this exhibition.
Well, I really think the themes were very important to us, that they be healthy themes, they be positive themes so that we could heal ourselves and heal the world. But so many of the things in our society also restrict us, help keep us from achieving our full potentials. And that's why resilience, to try and try again, to get up over and over again, regardless of what life throws at you, to keep trying and to keep pushing those barriers and those that resistance to reaching our full potential, not only for ourselves, but also to empower the world.
Absolutely. I think for those of you who have not yet seen the exhibition, it contains so many empowering messages, not only in the ways in which the artists featured interpret the world and have seen it through their varying perspectives and seen beyond the challenges it throws at us to something more beautiful and something more meaningful from which we can all learn, even if some of the truths that are revealed are unpleasant. And so thinking about that, Priscilla, how did you go about selecting the artists? We know Ohio and most of the artists reside in Ohio who are in this show, but Ohio is full of so many talented individuals, and to have narrowed it down and established criteria, I'm sure that in and of itself was a difficult task. So can you tell us a little bit about how you engaged in that process of inviting artists to be part of this?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that was probably one of the most fun aspects. But we really had to have criteria, and we were trying to create something that was inclusive. You might have noticed between the three curators, we're all white women of a certain age. And we did not want that to be, you know, the demographic of the artists that we represented. We really thought very seriously about how we could represent the diversity of women in all aspects, whether that's race or age or, and in terms of artists, it certainly is ways of working, ways of thinking about how you present your work and what that work means to you. So just in terms of diversity of working, we have everything from the abstraction of Michelle Wachs's piece to you know, very clear illustration of Laurel Winter's pieces and everything in between. So we really managed to get a wide variety of diversity, and that was purposeful in what we were choosing. In terms of other artists, you know, trying to fill out that roster of diversity, we really, you know, each have our own friends and people that are artists, but we really needed to stretch beyond that. And that was one of the fun things about this process, was stretching ourselves to be as inclusive as we could. So for example, I had gone to a workshop with wonderful painter Sarah Curry, and we had not met. And I loved her work, and I thought she was a very strong person. And I just said, would you join us? And so many artists said, yes, I will. And so that happened over and over again with people that I didn't personally know, but were willing to be part of this process. And I think part of it was because the concept was so strong and so important. The youngest artist in our group had just graduated from Ashland, and we watched her for 4 years deal with being an excellent student, but also a disease that followed her through every semester of college. And so to me, she was the epitome of young resilience, and she always had a smile on her face, Kiana Ziegler, and always did excellent work. And so as I was thinking about resilience, she is the youngest in there, and she was definitely part of that. J. Lee Garcia, I had not met her, but seen her work, and she's up at Kent State, an extraordinary printmaker, and in fact, there's her work right there. And so lots of these connections were important to us. How do we find diversity? How do we recognize different artists and different styles and different media and bring them into the fold? Probably the most fun one was Patricia and her husband were on vacation in Canada, and Patricia happened into a gallery and saw Charmaine Murch's work and said, would you join us? You know, and she said, certainly, I'll send. So it's been a community that we're developing too, and I think that's important to all of us too, that artists work individually so often, and so it's nice to be part of a community and start to build some of those relationships.
Thank you. I think that that's a really key facet of what it means to be part of an arts community, whether you're working within a museum or a gallery or your artists. Not only the synergy, of course, between the artist in the venue and your audience, but among artists, especially during a year that's been so challenging, being able to assemble, even if it's virtually, as we are now, and being able to talk about, have a forum for discussing the various topics that you've addressed, and how we can continue to carry these conversations forward through an artistic platform, I think is really critical.
Mm-hmm.
At this time, I wanted to turn it over to Priscilla, because I was sort of helping to facilitate the curatorial introduction, and Priscilla is going to help moderate the discussion with the artists, among which all three curators are. And I did want to acknowledge we're receiving some questions in the chat, and that's great. Among them was a list of all of the artists being referenced, and absolutely, I will drive those of you who are here to a complete list of artists at the very end. And again, this will be recorded, and the information will also be on Facebook where this lives. So without further ado, I'm going to stop my video and turn it over to you, Priscilla.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'll join everyone for Q&A in a bit.
Great. So we have two artists with us in addition to the three of us curators who are also artists exhibiting in the show. But I first want to introduce Sarah McMahon, and I'm going to let her talk a little bit about herself. But Sarah is a fairly recent MFA graduate from Kent State, and she's been teaching. And one of the reasons we chose her work, was it combines just extraordinarily intense storytelling, the textile, which I love, craft, but also a technology that is, on the cutting edge today. So Sarah, if you would tell us about your work, that'd be awesome.
There we go. Okay. Yes, thank you, Priscilla. And just real quick, thank you so much to the curators for including me, and to Massillon Museum for hosting us. Yeah, I recently received my MFA from Kent State, where I am currently still teaching. I'm also a teaching artist with the Arts and Stark Smarts program, which is really a blast. But as for the work, this really grew out of my utter fascination with the mind-body relationship, and really how absolutely strange that is. And so the imagery kind of hits on that. It's really another fascination, is those ideas of interior and exterior, and how things work together that way. But in terms of the imagery, it is a female form, that is me, interacting with this box that I built. And so it is a female form. I do identify, as female. So has its own connotations, but in a broader sense, it's really about navigating identity within a body, which is, again, the strangest state of being, and how those can add up, how sometimes they don't feel like they add up. Any Doctor Who fans will know the phrase ugly bags of mostly water. So it's just again, a strange state of being that we're constantly kind of navigating, and then with gender and roles and how we kind of interact together, we just like to throw this whole other complex level, on top of that, on something that's already sort of barely comprehensible. But with that mind-body connection is also one of the reasons that I really love this this way of working and this technique. So these are hand woven, but they're woven on a digital loom, so a jacquard loom, TC1, and so the imagery and the files you create, they start out in this digital form, so they don't exist. They're just a strange, combination of zeros and ones until it's woven. And then there's this concrete object. So there's this beautiful relationship between there too, mind, body, physical, kind of physical and psychological, or more abstract. So it's a jacquard loom, and it's very, very hard to access unless you have connections to a university that has one. But Praxis in Cleveland just got the first one, I believe, in the country, where you can actually sign up for time to work on this. But again, content-wise, it really creates, this technology creates a really strong connection to between digital and analog, which I'm, again, kind of pretty fascinated by. And especially as someone who largely doesn't have a great relationship with technology, this was a really strong way for me to kind of understand it a little better, and just sort of broadened my understanding more, I'd say.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think those you know, the images are so strong. These are photographic images, and then they're digitally reproduced through this computerized loom, and that whole process is, it's also magic. So I think that's great. Thank you. Sarah, did you have more? Or
No,
okay, great. So I want to introduce Gwen Waight, and I feel so funny doing this because Gwen and I have never met, and part of this whole process is, you know, all of us getting to know one another and being open to these new people. But Gwen, I love her work. It is often pulling in found objects to create sculpture. It is poetic, it is storytelling, it is humorous, and it is very serious. So Gwen, if you would say more about yourself and also about your work, that'd be wonderful.
Let's see if I can get this. Can you hear me or no?
I can hear you. I can't see you yet, but I can hear you.
Oh, you can't see me. Let's see. Start video. There we go. It says it might not let me do video. I am on my phone.
Well, we can hear you just fine if you want to just tell
good.
stories.
Because yeah, I can't get the I can see you guys. I can see my image. I couldn't get my computer to work, so I tried my iPhone, and it's working. So I'm okay with that.
There you go. We got
There
your
I
face.
am.
Yeah.
I am. My face. Woohoo! Yay.
All
Okay.
right, take it away.
So yeah, I've been collecting found objects for probably most of my life. I've always been a collector. So always pieces, parts, always looking down, always looking at the side of the road, always head down looking at the ground a lot. So now is there a direct question about these pieces, or should I just discuss these pieces?
I would love to just hear, you know, just some things you're thinking about as you're putting them together. And, you know, they're very strong on a formal level as well as a conceptual level. So whatever you want to talk about in those would be great.
Okay. I remember being part of a panel and people would ask me which comes first, the pieces, parts, or the concept. And a lot of times it'll be the parts that speak to me first, which is different for a lot of people because I think people often start with an idea first. But the parts and the things that I find really speak to me. And they really have something to say, I feel, and they're like almost begging to be put together. And so for me, these pieces, parts, they just kind of like start forming a story that is part of a lot of like my memories and ideas that I have about the objects that are involved. And this piece that's on the screen, that actual woman who is jumping off of what looks like a boat is my actual high school swimming trophy from when I used to swim competitively. And I took the topper off, and I just like that whole idea of and in the piece that's closer, she's kind of tied to it, to this boat, and the piece is called Don't Abandon Hope. And it just is one of those strong ideas that I always hang on to, is to not lose hope. And so even though she's tied to it, it's more like the whole idea of hope is tied to her too. So it's not like she's tied to the ship. It's more like she's tied to the concept of hope. So, and I just really liked, this was a very important election time. So I really liked the idea of putting the red, white, and blue, and the whole idea of the voting and how important it was for women to not feel like, well, it just doesn't matter what I do. It really does. And so I put it all together in that concept. Oh, and that piece is called Grin and Bear It. Again, with a lot of, and because I have to identify a lot of times, you know, I'm an American, so I identify as American, even though I'm an Asian American, which I've been making some pieces that identify a lot with the Asian issue that I've had to deal with all my life because I'm half Japanese and I'm half, American. And so I identify as both. But this is a concept where people are always telling women that they're always objectifying us and telling us to smile, and that everything would be, we'd be better if we'd smile. We'd be prettier if we'd smile. Things would just go easier if we smile. And so I have the word smile embroidered into the American flag, but I also have the cleavers hanging there with the idea that I couldn't decide if I wanted to embroider the word smile onto the flag or if I wanted to put the word smile on the actual blades of the cleavers. But I think it worked out, to how I like it on the flag. And there are lots of identifying things there, like there are some alarm. There's an alarm bell at the bottom, which, is idea of it being alarming that we're always being objectified and told to do things. And the crystals and the reflection and reflecting light and of course the cleavers, because I'm not necessarily an angry woman, but I don't like being told what to do either. So and this piece is called I Never Promised You a Rose Garden. It's that whole idea of as a woman being put up on a pedestal, again, objectification. And when you're put up on a pedestal, it's not that you're not on the same level and playing ground, and you're not given the same kind of opportunities as a man can be given. And so where some people think that's all great and wonderful and fantastic, I identify it as not being that awesome. And the whole piece is set on an ironing arm board. So, which is also like what people identify a lot of as women's work, and what's women's work and where we're supposed to be. And so it has a lot of duality in the meaning of, being put on a pedestal, but also being a peg put in a hole. And so that's that piece.
Wonderful. I just, they're all so strong. And I really, is the idea of humor at all?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes. You can win. My daughter's told me so many times, Mom, we don't understand how you do this, but you say some of the most biting comments to people, but they still like you. And I said, well, if you can say it with a smile, if you can make people laugh, or if you can add a bit of cleverness to it, they'll listen to you more. And you don't feel it. And then that whole idea of that angry woman too, it's like, it kind of sets people back on their heels. And so then you're kind of at an advantage. And I like that whole idea of whimsy. I remember a person telling me once in a show that they found my pieces appealing because even though they were found objects, and sometimes those can carry a lot of nostalgia and sometimes can be a little bit scary, or go like the whole, just the time traveler kind of and futuristic and be a little bit fearful. They found that my pieces were whimsical. So yeah, lots of humor.
That's a great term too, whimsical. Yeah, excellent. Thank you. I love it. It's great.
Thank you.
I think maybe my work is up next. So I'll tell you a little bit about what I think about. I'm an artist who I kind of wear two hats. I'm a two-dimensional painter and that sort of thing. And then I'm also deeply involved with textile work. And I've been making a lot of clothing forms, and my thought is that they should look both familiar so that you can relate to them, and they're usually human scale and that sort of thing, but also have this sort of discomfort that you think, oh my, I could never wear that. And I don't want them to be related to fashion. That's not important to me, but I do want them to have a presence. And so that idea of, something that's both familiar but also unfamiliar is important to me. But this came from my life, which is a lot like, many people's lives, I think both men and women, where you start on a path and you start to experience things that change you. They change your shape. They change who you are. They change how you think. Whether that's job opportunities or moving or children or obligations or things that you tend to that you think, sure, I can add that to my list of 40 things. Of course, I can add this other thing. And you start to not recognize who you are. And so some of the forms I make are about that idea of finding who you are, or acknowledging that you, for better, many times, or worse, you're not who you thought you were. And that change is in this textile form. So this one's a little bit more of a Victorian. That's kind of why I threw it in here. It's a little bit more Victorian, so it kind of reminded me of the suffragettes and that sort of thing. But definitely there's no corset you could wrap around that to get yourself in there. And then this image, this is called Turn, Turn, Turn. I think of the song, to everything there is a season, but also the Bible verse from Ecclesiastes, the same thing. To everything there is a season. And again, with the idea of women and change and the seasons of our lives, the seasons of our experiences that come from child rearing, a lot of that, obligations, relationships, tending, and taking care of things, and being aware that the taking care of things is on your shoulders. And so you change. And so this set of 10 garments are all the same basic pattern, if you know sewing. So they have the same form, but they are involved in this kind of evolving, changing colors, changing forms. And I also like to use found objects, I think, for environmental reasons, but also because they carry a resonance. The fabric and the object carries memories and things that we associate with it. So these are mostly made of found objects that I've deconstructed and reconstructed and put them together. I kind of like to take up space too. So this is pretty big. It takes up a chunk of space. I feel like these forms respond to one another, and so they need that space to interact and be a collective, just like we are. And let's see, let me ask Judy next. Judy, tell us some more about your incredibly dangerous looking, beautiful glass work.
Okay, well, my artwork is, I don't see my video coming up there. No, it is. Anyway, I'll just talk even if I don't seem to be on there. Okay, it's what it is it's a body of work called Breaking Silence. And that the idea of being in a box that when an opera singer sings and can break the glass, and when we speak our truth, we break out of those boxes that we're in. This one that's showing here is, I call it Ladders. And it's about the demographic of women and the disparity of economic disparity, climbing that ladder, that glass ceiling that exists. And those ladders are I cast in bronze, and the figures are in bronze casting. And there's two women with the ladders with all the rungs in them, and they are, progressing to that glass ceiling, where the woman who has, as most women do, the majority of childcare, she has a baby strapped to her back, and there's many rungs missing in her ladder. So it's so much harder to take on the majority of childcare, and to either be a single mother or even a working mother in a traditional family, to make it through that, plus all of the childcare responsibilities as well as the childcare costs. Sometimes will disappear most of the woman's income. But I did a series of these, about 10 different pieces. And what they are made of is, it's fused glass, where I literally break the glass and reassemble it and fire it in a kiln. And that then assemble the whole thing with a UV glue to make the boxes that speak to us, whether it's in our mind that we're breaking out of a box, or we're breaking out of the box of society, or just expectations of ourselves or expectations of our friends and family. So it's all about breaking that silence that breaks the box. The other piece here is, well, this was the piece that started it all, was that action of, with these boxes, the breakage is, so it's just in that moment when it breaks, but hasn't fallen apart yet. And in that moment where we're in the box and don't realize we are, then we start to fight our way out, then we break through, and then we actually climb out. And that's where our equality, our potential lies, in breaking out of those boxes and breaking that silence from within us, and to show the example for other women that we can break out and that we can be more than we think we are.
Wonderful. It's a delightful medium, and I love listening to you talk about the challenges of dealing with broken glass and just the alchemy that goes along with that. Patricia, I'd love to hear some more about you and your work, and so there you go.
This was my first piece that was in the show in Ashland, and it came because I've always had a fascination for the female form going back to college. And my idea initially was to create a woman who was celebrating with her arms up and a smile on her face and just loving the world, that this was someone who had gone through hardships. And what happened is I was challenged by the construction, and I broke a lot of rules. And I kept on adding clay. And then I eventually had to start cutting things out because she wouldn't fit in my kiln. And I decided to keep her instead of looking at it as a mistake, because life, comes to us and we have these expectations, but it doesn't necessarily end up like we had hoped. And I really decided that, since I also collect found objects, that I wanted her as is to be a reminder to me and to anyone else, that you just keep going. And that's what this whole show was about. Women who just keep going in spite of, and do not see themselves as victims indefinitely. So, and then the second one sort of ended up with a different theme. I created this woman, serene, calm, happy, content. But I wanted her to be part of the resilience theme. And because I really like putting things together, she was an intent. It became a step-by-step process. I created the figure first, and then I noticed the atlas, the abstract atlas in my office, in my studio that I had around. And I had these other pieces of iron, the circles, that were hard and stiff, but she was soft and serene and calm and peaceful. And I wanted her up high because she was feeling good, and to inspire folks that life keeps going. And also I'll mention real fast the song. Automatically when I put it together, the song, he's got the whole world in his hands. I just wanted to change it, and I did. And it's an old spiritual song from the early 20s, a African-American song. And that's it. Thank you for listening to me. it's been a joy being in this whole process.
Very nice, Patricia. Thank you so much. Well, Alex, do we have any questions?
Let's see. We haven't, maybe let's open it up right now. You can utilize either the Q&A or the chat. And while we are soliciting those from you in the room, I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you all again. And thank you, Gwen and Sarah, for being part of this exhibit. And I had the opportunity to meet Sarah briefly when she was delivering her artwork. And Gwen, we've not had an opportunity to meet in person. And I wondered if, while we're waiting for some questions to come in, and I can see the attendee list, and I know several of you, and I know you have great questions and some burning questions, and some of you I've talked to about this exhibit. So would love to have you present them. But Gwen, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you reside, what your background is as well, and then Sarah as well, and then I'll start fielding the question box.
Did I unmute myself? Did I do this okay?
Yes, yep. We can hear
Oh,
you.
good. Okay. It's like a tiny little phone. I'm live in Peninsula. Oh, there goes my golden retriever. Ugh. And I live in Peninsula and have for the past 17 years. I back right up against the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. I moved here from Chicago, where I lived for 10 years. And let me tell you, it's a lot easier to find junk in Chicago. So much easier. I have to actually seek things out here. We do have a lake home in Michigan. So I do use a lot of found objects from the lake when I'm there. I go gathering. People always think I'm just, having an Earth Day cleanup, but it's all for art. But and I got my degree. I'm actually from Iowa, of all places. It's a long story, but I got my degree in ceramics and sculpture from the University of Iowa, and that's where I met my husband. So I was an art student and he was a medical student. So
thank you so much for sharing. No, I think I love the idea of imagining artists scavenging for the treasures that will comprise the artwork that we so appreciate. And thanks for giving us some of that insight. And Sarah, can you tell us a little bit about your background too? And then we have a couple questions. I'll jump right in.
Yeah, let's see. I got just a BA studio art kind of general from Hiram College. So I kind of messed around with all sorts of things, printmaking and drawing. And it was later where I kind of honed in on textiles, which is sort of strange. They were always around. My mother's a weaver, but it was much later when something clicked with weaving, which is really my main, I guess, medium. But like all of you, I think we've said, we like to mess around with a little bit of everything, and particularly collage and assemblage. And I found that I had always sort of incorporated fabric in older work and in different ways, but I too find a lot of joy in collecting and getting weird looks when you're on the ground picking what's garbage up to other people. Still do it, but finding ways to incorporate that, and even in weaving, finding different ways to incorporate other materials too. And I don't remember who I was talking to recently, but I grew up in Columbiana County. I'm here now, actually. But some of my earliest memories of discovery and just digging around in things and finding, Priscilla, I loved the way that you put it, that objects just, or fabrics too, will just have this resonance and they'll just speak to you. And even if it's a weird chip of wood, it's like, oh, I'm going to take you, you're going to be something. And sometimes it's, found the perfect thing that I picked up 20 years ago, I'll use now, you know, and it's just a
I
kind
like
of
that.
beautiful thing.
I like that she said carries memories, that found objects carry memories, that clothing carries memories, because it does seem to carry memories and nostalgia with them.
Mhm.
And they're different for everybody.
Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. But they something, you know, it pulls something out of us emotionally, or sometimes you can't even put a finger on what exactly that feeling is. But growing up on this little horse farm, but it had a ancient old bank barn, and I remember when we were here, it was just full of stuff. Whoever lived here before, and I used to love going. I can't believe I didn't have tetanus or something, but go dig around and find really interesting textures or materials or that sort of thing too. So, yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. And I love hearing about the ways in which you overlap. And one of our question, I mean, in some of what draws you to the inspiration you seek and the way that you view the world and the, you know, the platforms and the media you use to interpret it. So we have a few questions that sort of relate to that. One of which is, you know, the extent to which you take inspiration from each other's artwork or other artists, and if so, which ones and why? I know that's a broad question. I'm sure you all have answers, and maybe I'll just start. If I could call on you, and maybe we could sort of answer briefly, so we could get a few in, because they're starting to pour now. But again, inspiration from each other, those of you in the room or others in the show, or who inspires you. Maybe we could start with Judy.
Okay. For me, I'm inspired by everything, by other artists, past history articles that I read. But I'm the enthusiasm to keep working, to keep pushing the boundaries, to learn something new. That makes all the difference to me in the world. It's like, I call it going back to the well. You can't, you know, it's sooner or later you dry up with ideas. Like I don't have one more creative idea, but when you go to the well and when you're with other artists and you get the input on your work, as well as being inspired and helped along through the tough parts, you know, with knowledge and technical skills and whatever, if there's always a hoop that you don't quite know what to do in every single piece, for me at least, to try and find that.
What about you, Priscilla?
Definitely, there's so much to be inspired by, and for me as a teacher and knowing a lot about art history too, I try to impress on my students, we are a continuum. We are part of this continuum, and I once read this book by Madeleine L'Engle. You guys probably all know her, and it was called Reflections on Faith and Art. And one of the things she said was, it doesn't matter what type of artist you are, a big one, a small one. Our goal is to feed the stream. And I've just loved that, whether you're a tributary or a big, you know, thing, we're all just feeding the same stream. So I like that idea that we're part of a continuum, and that the things I do, you know, somebody's done generations before, even though I'm doing it in my time in a different way. And so, like Judy said, it's easy to be inspired by a lot. And when you open yourself up to that, you know, then you really find this community, and you get inspired by that. One young artist that I really love right now, though, her name is Swoon. So if you haven't checked out Swoon, check her out. She's awesome.
I agree. We have one of the artists who's featured in the exhibition, Claire Marie Adams, has a question about the diversity of media represented and also in demographics. And Priscilla, you spoke a little bit to this earlier, and the importance of that. You and Patricia both did in representing both diversity in media, but also in race and experience, and in order to really reflect a variety of perspectives and lenses through which we see the world and interpret these issues that might be universal, but might be inequitably experienced, depending on the backgrounds from which people come. So can you speak a bit to that, Priscilla, in terms of, how difficult was that to achieve that goal that you and Patricia addressed in as curators?
I don't even know if I could say we achieved it. I would say that we really tried hard to be diverse, to look at, I think we did in terms of the show and the diversity of work and ideas. And I'm just constantly impressed with the work that is in there every time I visit the show. But it is hard for us all to break out of our bubbles of who we know and how we get connected, and to get into some of those areas where we don't know people. So I was pleased that we were able to expand our diversity bubble as much as we did, but I wish we could have done even more.
One of the things we talked about, Priscilla, when we were working on the statement too, and Patricia and Judy, I know you recognize as well, is that, and I know we have some historians on the call too. I saw Professor or Dr. Heapy too is among the attendees. The suffrage movement acknowledges the right that women were given to vote, but of course it did not include all women. And equity in that respect came so much later for so many women, and is still being, we're still trying to achieve equity in terms of access to voting rights. And so, this is something that the exhibit also acknowledges is a continuing battle, and that the power of these voices unified to express themselves within the context of the exhibition is really important as well, for that reason, among others. I see, well, a lot of questions. Let's see. Priscilla, you talk about taking up space, and Patricia about placement up high of the figure, and Sarah and Judy, the idea of the figure confined or breaking out of space. So how do you consider the landscape in the space in your work?
For me, the idea of the space was very prominent. What fits in well, what's the proportion, but it was also about being confined in that space, and that there's room for so much more. And that that's what I loved about being able to capture the glass in that act of breaking out, and that we're always breaking out and breaking the barriers, whether it's a personal growth or world growth or society growth, the sense of space. And I think it became more true. I had started this work before the pandemic, and then it became, oh my gosh, I'm quarantined. I can't go anywhere, and I can't let people in. So that sense of space became so much more prominent and edgy during the work because of what the world was going through.
I think one thing I can
like to speak, Patricia,
is that I don't think I necessarily look specifically at the place of space, but women's place in space, in equality, has come a long way and has a long way to go. And I think so many of our pieces reflect the different perspectives, and it's a concept. It's not just a pretty picture. There's a theme of wanting to touch other people. So that's it.
No, absolutely. I think that idea of concept is so important, and you all as artists are charged with, and again, finding creative voice to allow us to better understand the world and the challenges and the concepts it presents. So we have another question from the audience. Obviously, this is called Women of Resilience. There are a lot of female forms represented in the exhibition. That might seem innate or expected, but the question is, do any of you ever use male figures or forms to demonstrate gender inequity? I realize it'd be that each of you works in different media and has different styles, and of course, you see
Yeah, I
represented in the
say
exhibit is
something,
not
yeah.
exhaustive of your body of work, but
Right, right. I usually don't try to set up a dichotomy between male and female because I think that's divisive, and I think many of the issues that women have, men actually have too. It's on a different level in a different way. But I just finished a body of work that's related to immigration, and I was trying to go with some things that sort of lend itself to gender neutrality, and then also two pieces that were actually, in my mind, male, and I don't always do that. And I thought, I need to. I need to try to take that on in the way an author might write a character who is male if she's a female, or female if he's male. But trying to understand that those gender roles a little bit more holistically. But yeah, I don't want to ever set up that dichotomy because I think it's hard. I think guilt and all those kinds of things. I don't want to open that door, I guess.
we have a lot of love in the chat for you all. Some from individuals who comment on how beautiful and thought-provoking the artwork is, and seeing it as a whole, contextualized as such a strong representation of a voice, and diverse voice. There are some people who apparently, some of you maybe helped mentor, who are showing you love in the chat. So if you haven't had a chance to check out the comments in the chat, I'd encourage the panelists to do so. Let's see, there is, again, people had asked for a complete list of names, and again, we'll post that on Facebook. What else do you, some of you, again, Priscilla mentioned she's never met Gwen in person and they'd only ever communicated by email. What questions do you have of each other to to wrap this up? Do any of you have questions you wanted to pose to one another, and we can just be flies on the wall?
I actually don't have a question. I just think I find it fascinating when you get a group of artists together like this, that so many of us are, even in quarantine, even in the time, we're doing a lot of the same things. We're collecting, we're viewing, it's like we do a lot of the same things that each other do. And it's not just humanity, as artists, I always said that if I were to go back and get my mastered or dissertation, I would do something about why we're drawn to the same objects or same patterns, same routines in art and in everyday, because that's what I find. I love that Priscilla said the things that were like so right, and I was like, yes, that's the same as me, and I like that a lot. So I don't really have a question. I just like that it brought more of that together.
I would echo that, and as much as this show is this extraordinary opportunity to showcase these women, 25 women artists from the greater area, fantastic work, but selfishly, like, I just want to get to know everybody and hang out a little bit too, because we are artists and we don't do that as much as we should, and certainly in this year we haven't. So we'll be looking forward to expanding that community of artists as well.
Yes, Gwen reminded us May 1st. Again, for those of you still with us, we have an in-person reception. It'll be wonderful to gain perspective, to just see all of you in person, meet you, gain more perspective on your creative process, and Again, for those of you who are joining massnew.org/tickets, you can reserve the time that you want to visit. It's more to give us an idea of how many people to expect. And we're going to practice take precautions and practice social distancing. But of course, there's nothing like it's great to see everyone virtually and see artwork virtually, but there's nothing like experiencing that physical connection with the work and with people. So we always want to leave people wanting more, right? There are more questions, there are more chats, there are even Facebook comments coming in. So feel free, those of you artists joining us, if you'd like to go on and engage with those people on the museum's Facebook page. But I want to thank everyone for your time tonight, your attention, for your commitment to helping us find hope, inspire us, and provide us with opportunities to explore these themes and ourselves in greater detail through your practice and your work. I hope everyone stays safe, has a wonderful evening, and look forward to connecting with you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.